What's happening, people? And once again, welcome back to youtube.com/CubCamTV for this, another edition of Cub Reacts. Right about now, we're continuing with our weekly review series. There's been a lot of cool albums that have dropped recently, and this next one we're going to be talking about is one of them. We're going to be getting into the sounds of Asher's 5 album. Again, a solid piece of work, which I'm very excited to discuss. As always, though, I hope you are enjoying all the additional content we're getting into. We're trying to do at least one album review a week. If there aren't any albums to review, we'll probably jump into an EP review or something like that, but this week we are focusing on Asher's 5. Now, I've got notes that I've written down. I always try to make a bit of an effort when we are putting together these live reviews. I always try to make sure we've got as much kind of content and research as we possibly can, and that's exactly what we're going to be getting into now. So, for me, on a very basic level, Asher is an artist who I can safely say I've only really started falling into listening to over the last sort of 5-6 months or so. This is primarily through doing all the YouTube work that we do and kind of exploring the sound more than anything else. So I would by no means call myself an Asher expert, an Asher veteran or anything like that. So these are basically the opinions that I'm going to be giving based on what I know so far about her sound, about her sort of her approach, and about her vocal in particular. But that being said, she's possibly one of my favourite additions to my own personal listening playlist. I think she's got such an incredible vocal range. I think the way she actually projects is so unique and so interesting sonically. It's an absolute pleasure to see a new Asher album, which I very much enjoyed listening through whilst making this review. Having followed the journey of the album in particular, obviously being released and promoted through different singles and things like that, I was genuinely very hopeful for a solid body of work, and to be honest, I think that's exactly what we have received with the album now landing. There's 10 tracks on there in total, so not too long to listen through. From a reviewer perspective, it's always nice to get a 10-track album rather than a 17 or 18. I do tend to feel a lot of the time with 17 or 18-track albums that there are tracks on there that don't need to be there. It's a theme we've actually noticed a fair few times recently. However, every single track on this project, I feel, has a reason for being there, right from the jump on this one. Musically, I feel as well, alongside this, before we get into the track-for-track breakdown, Asher has kind of moved into a much more sort of Afropop-centric direction over the last few years. It's something that I feel a lot of people have noticed. It's not something that I would have necessarily picked up on until it's been pointed out, but now you kind of look through it and listen through the album, it's a lot more kind of clear. She's definitely retained that unique factor, but she's definitely kind of incorporated a lot more of what I want to say sort of more pop-centric features to what she does. And this isn't a bad thing. It means we end up with the best of both worlds, and that's exactly what this album kind of represents sonically. I feel this album is a really good kind of documentary into her recent transformation, and P Prime, as a producer, has done an exceptional job on building the instrumental canvas from which she's been able to illustrate a fabulous display of kind of variation and musical aptitude. Fantastic stuff from P Prime on the backdrop for this one. So we begin with the soulful, sweeping vocals of Mayana, which, for incorporating South American sounding horn melodies and smooth, almost like lounge sounding drum arrangements, it's been very, very enjoyable to listen through this one. I think this is an instrumental that's allowed her to truly flourish vocally. We get to hear all of the kind of inflections more than anything else, and all of the unique elements of her voice that makes her voice so special. And to be honest with you, this was one of the biggest drops of 2021 to me, although it dropped towards the end of the year. In hindsight, and in regards to what it kind of represents and what it did sonically, this was one of the strongest standalone releases. Next up from this as well, we get into the second single of the project, which again launched a couple of weeks back. It goes by the name Ocean. This is the track we did review here on the channel, and you can check out the full reaction for it here on the channel as well. But it's another beautiful example of Asher's musical versatility from me. After a few weeks, it's definitely holding up. It's still sounding strong. You always have that risk when you kind of release singles prior to an album of them getting a bit stale by the time the album lands. However, this one fits right into the mesh that 5 creates. The instrumental, again, very kind of organic sounding, but it's driven by sharp, organic sounding percussion that again hits home very cleanly. Yet she's able to maintain this level of delicacy within her voice over the top. I think that's a bit of a running theme of this album. No matter where the kind of experimentation of the instrumentation goes, she's able to maintain her uniqueness and the things that makes her vocals special, which I really, really enjoy about this project. Now, obviously, we do need to talk about the WizKid track next, IDG or I Don't Go. Again, a track we have already reviewed, so if you want to hear a more in-depth breakdown, you can check that out on the channel. But I've said it a few times, despite the fact that Wiz is obviously an A-star name, one of the biggest artists in the world at the moment, without a shadow of a doubt, and he delivers a top-notch verse on this one. I think Asher remains the main event of the tune. Wiz's vocal is obviously very smooth. It's kind of a liquid vocal approach over his verse, which definitely works within the confines of the track, and he understands what he needs to do for the track. However, for me, Asher's impressive vocal range and the sort of misty projection she brings, it steals the show on another level, creating another very enchanting original. The album starts off very, very strong after these 3 tracks. It's a very complete sounding tune and a very hypnotic sounding arrangement, which obviously I say a lot that I really, really enjoy. I love getting pulled into tunes more than anything else. Next up, we see Nike, which sees us explore a much more outside the box original with blippy instrumentation and kind of a lot more kind of, I want to say, robotic sounding instrumentation. It provides a smooth and colourful yet aquatic sounding backdrop. Now, it gives Asher a lot of space to function in this one. She's allowed to try things a little bit differently, a few different sorts of vocal techniques and maneuvers. I think it's solid. It's not outstanding. I feel this is the first time in the album where I'm not kind of blown away by a tune, but it's definitely worth the 3 minutes that the track is. It's interesting and it's different, and I think on albums you do need to try different things. It might be a tune that for me really, really grows, but it's the first time on this album where I'm not kind of blown away with what I'm hearing. From here we then jump into a similar structure to Ocean with Morning Man. Very similar instrumentally on this one, with the arrangements and the sort of sounds that are being used. It's an interesting one, as Asher jumps back into a sort of airy vocal bag, which is very much her kind of prime approach, I feel. When she gets into that sort of airy, quite mystical sounding performance, that's when she's at her best. And this one gives us a smooth display of jazzy prowess within the vocal. And again, instrumental work is top notch from Pre-Prime. Fantastic stuff. We then jump into another top-notch collaboration as the Cavemen arrive for a blissful performance on Good Times. Whenever you see the Cavemen arriving on an album for a feature, you want them to do exactly what we hear on this one. Asher is able to explore a much more traditional sound here as well. It's provided by the sonic genius, realistically, that the Cavemen create. They provide heartwarming backing vocals, just a very kind of percussive, laden structure to the tune as well, leading towards some incredible harmonies between the Cavemen and Asher's vocal as well, sounding absolutely fantastic, and another nod to her versatility more than anything else. We get a turn in pace next with Believer, which delivers an almost dancehall sounding set of drum sounds, very punchy, very, very processed, that really cut through the mix down on this one. And yet with all this, Asher is able to remain delicate and very composed with her vocal, still able to bring an airiness to what is essentially kind of like a shell-off of drum structures. And it's a really kind of interesting combination of the kind of calm and the manic kind of meeting and fusing really, really cleanly. Again, not blown away by it, but another solid album addition. There are no duds on this album, put it that way. There are highs and lows, but the lows are above the average sort of medium, if that makes sense. Moving into the next one then, which is the third and final collaboration alongside Amma Ray. It goes by the name All I Ever Wanted. Again, this one is a lot more electronic and a lot more outside the box, as you would expect from an Amma Ray feature, who is becoming very, very well known and very, very good at exploring more experimental zones around the kind of traditional Afropop sounds, and she does it very, very well indeed. It's again very, very different. It's a quirky display of kind of syncopated melodies, sort of half-time, almost ska-like chords, which run throughout the middle of the tune. But then on top of this as well, we get to see sort of more almost SoundCloud-style drum rhythms, kind of looking at sort of futuristic, sort of future bass and EDM and that sort of style. But it works quite nicely, and it gives them both an opportunity to explore a much more sort of out there approach to the vocals, which works quite nicely, I've got to say. It's a cool collaboration. Both of them do quite well on it. The skippy textures of Love Me or Get Me Red Wine then follow, which is a cool, smooth, refreshing outro track with a sultry kind of feel to it, to be honest with you. Again, doused in classy production techniques and organic sounding drum displays that really do fit Asher's vocals perfectly, and that rounds off the approach to the album in general. Overall, I think this is a wicked display. This is an album that, for me, kind of puts her into a much more central zone. It allows her to, again, build off the back of this. I think it's a wicked display of her versatility more than anything else, and I think there are going to be a lot of fans out there that weren't necessarily huge fans of Asher before that are now going to be fans of Asher following on from this one. Really, really smooth approach, and I've got to say as well, just looking at the album art itself, I really like the album art, I've got to say. Just simple, plain. There's a lot of airiness going on, obviously, with the kind of windy kind of background of what she's she's wearing. Really simple logo. I think overall the actual image for the album gives off a very good representation of what it's all about for me. Just Asha being herself, showcasing how good she can be when she's able to kind of explore different realms, and I think it's a fabulous documentation of her musical journey. So there we go. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this technical analysis and musical breakdown review of Asha 5. If you did, please get into the comments down below and let me know. And also, I'd be very, very keen to see what your favourite tracks off the album are for me. I think Mayana is still the standout tune. There's a reason why it was the lead single off the project, but there are some very cool moments on this one. I'm keen to hear from yourselves about what your favourite moments on the album are, and obviously what this album means to you more than anything else. If you are a long-term Asha fan, how do you feel about the direction? How do you feel about the musicality? Get into the comments and let me know. I'm keen to hear from each and every one of you. However, that is it from me. If you did enjoy, please make sure you're hitting that subscribe button on the right-hand side of the page, turning notifications on, leaving a like, leaving a comment, all of that good stuff, and we shall see you all next time. Peace.
Sounding so good right now. My sound in a Brighton town.
Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel right now, CubCamTV. Stay locked.